Perkins Creek is rock-lined the entire length. You have one rock pool after another. It's one of the places where we think that we might find yellow-legged frogs, which are even more rare than red-legged frogs. They like cool, rushing streams rather than the muddier ones.
If you have rock scramblers in your group, they can depart from the tour here and take a side trip upstream, assuming the water levels in the hanging clematis and poison oak allow. Our tour is headed downstream, along parts of the creek that the fire didn't touch. Before we leave the fire zone, though, let's talk about this area's ecological future.
Well, the first thing back will be the grasses, which unfortunately mostly are non-native at this point. And we should have a great crop of wildflowers next spring. Without cattle grazing, the argument goes that the high grass shades out some of the flowers. That won't be such a problem this year. The flowers will be starting the same time as the grass. Some of the bulb-based flowers, we'll see them in greater numbers than before. Even though they'll sprout every year, they won't flower under the shade of high grass or of chaparral shrubs. Once they get the sunlight, they take off.
Among the bulbs to look for are Fremont star lily and brodeas of all sorts, including harvest lilies. Mount Diablo's last two big fires hit in 1931 and 1977. And those fires brought species of plants that hadn't been seen on the mountain in decades. Their seeds had lain dormant until germination was triggered by heat or the chemicals in the smoke of the fire. In the spring of 2014 and 2015, look for flame poppies, golden eardrops, and whispering bells.
A lot of the shrubs are able to stump sprout, so the fire wasn't terribly hot. They'll be back from the original root crown. Interestingly enough, one shrub that doesn't stump sprout regularly here is the manzanita, the Mount Diablo manzanita, and the bigberry manzanita, and the common or Contra Costa manzanita. They're all killed by fires. Only one manzanita here can stump sprout after a fire. That's the Eastwood manzanita in the Black Hills.
That doesn't mean the non-sprouting manzanitas will be wiped out. They'll just have to reproduce from seeds, which will take a little longer. On Mount Diablo, chamise is usually dominant in chaparral, but that could temporarily change.
After a fire, we get the ones that were waiting, the fire followers, like the Fremont mallow. But you also get the other ones that are able to start quickly, that are just opportunists. First, the sages come up, the black sage and the pitcher sage, because they're faster. And then the chamise starts, and eventually that will take over. But not only do you see stuff that you didn't see before because the seeds were waiting in the soil, but it gives a chance to the ones that aren't as aggressive. So this will have a very nice odor, I suspect. We'll have lots of sage here before the not-so-exciting chamise takes over again. The one mistake they won't make this time is trying to reseed the park, which was one of the big controversies after '77. The Contra Costa Times and the Lesher family began a campaign to get money to reseed the park, and one idea was to plant it with coast redwoods and Monterey pines. That was defeated, and ultimately some of the local park personnel were tasked with going to local nurseries and getting gray pines and blue oaks to plant, which seemed much better, but the purists pointed out that it wasn't the same genetics as the local trees. And one of the rangers that was involved in the planting also thought it was a poor idea. He's commented that most every tree that they planted died. And by that time, the mountain had come back on its own.
Now walk downstream on a single-track trail along the far side of the creek. Stop when you get to the first of two historic rock dams. As you walk, compare the pictures in this guide with what you're seeing. How much sediment has come down the canyon? Has the creek carved any new channels under or around the dams? Watch for pitcher sage, California fuchsia, and California sunflower. We'll stop at the first dam for the story of the area's most colorful 19th century character, William Ryder Powell.